Hey everybody, welcome to my first video on SEO analytics in SQL using Google Search Console data in BigQuery. As some of you might know, I promised to do this a long time ago, so I'm excited to finally get started. Now let's get into who this video is for and talk about the topics we're going to cover. So this video is for digital marketers and SEO specialists who want more sophisticated analysis at larger scale and for those analyses to be more replicable. If you've already set up the integration, that's great. You're going to be off and running quickly. If you haven't, that's okay. This will be a good preview of what's possible with your data in BigQuery. In this video, we're going to cover an introduction to the BigQuery Console, which may be new to many of you if you're more familiar with the Google Search Console UI. We're also going to introduce the Google Search Console data in BigQuery. There's three main tables. We're going to talk about those. And then finally, we're going to do a quick demo on how to query data and make sense of that data in BigQuery. In the future, we're going to talk about how Google Search Console Google collects this data and how it's stored in BigQuery. We're going to do a deep dive into the different definitions of that data, the attributes and the metrics, and what makes sense to do with that data. And then finally, we're going to perform several different types of analysis that are common for SEOs to do with this data. In the future, there may be cool things like AI and ML and different integrations that we can do, but that's where we're going to get started for now. Hey, thanks for checking out my video on Google Search Console and BigQuery. I just want to let you know that this is the first class in a course that I'm doing all about Google Search Console and BigQuery and generally learning SQL for SEO. If you're interested in the course, you can look it up on my website, trevorfox.com, or find the link in the description below. If you sign up, you'll get access to one-on-one support from me and to code samples and configuration files that I show in my videos. Thanks again, and let's get back to the video. Okay, welcome to the BigQuery Studio, also known as the BigQuery Console. This is where we're going to spend most of the time in this video, and it's going to be obviously very important for doing any type of analysis on the Google Search Console data. And so I wanted to help just familiarize you with BigQuery in general, and then also introduce the UI and understand how to navigate it so that you can get into doing the analysis that you want to do. For those of you who are unfamiliar with BigQuery, the very quick introduction is that it is what's called a data warehouse. There's a lot of history behind it, dating back probably definitely more than 10 years ago. But a data warehouse is essentially just a very large database, like a MySQL or Postgres database. It's relational, meaning it has tables of data that can be joined together. Calculations can be performed on it. But what's different between BigQuery or other data warehouses like Snowflake or Redshift is that it's designed to do analytics, not to do transactions. So make e-commerce transactions or provide pages to a server really quickly, like in the case of MySQL and WordPress. BigQuery allows you to store really large petabytes of data and join it together and do operations on millions of rows, whereas if you were doing that in MySQL, it would probably lock up because it's designed to do one by one really quick transactions and keep records of like an application or something. So moral of the story is BigQuery is a data warehouse designed for analytics. And so we're going to talk about how to use BigQuery for the purposes of analytics. So the first thing that you want to get familiar with in the BigQuery console is over here. It's called the Explorer. It's how you navigate data or the data that's stored in BigQuery. So at the top level, each one of these is what's called a project. Projects are associated with billing and other kind of organizational things. You probably have at least one project if you've set up Google Search Console in BigQuery so far. And within every project, there are a bunch of different assets. You can save queries, you can do notebooks, but most importantly, there's all these things called data sets. Data sets are also commonly thought of as schema. Schema are just kind of like, if you will, namespaces, or you can think of them like folders for organizing data, for organizing tables in your warehouse, so that you can kind of keep keep things nice and organized, just like you think of a file system. And just like a file system, you can open up this schema, and as you can see, it's called Search Console, and you can see 3 tables in here. And export log, probably the most uninteresting table for all of these, is just a log of when data is collected, ingested into BigQuery. And then there is the site impressions table and the URL impressions table. And when you want to kind of just get an understanding of what data is in a table in BigQuery, all you have to do is click on it, and then it'll kind of pull up this Explorer for that table. And right here, let's see, I'm getting my face out of the way here. It shows the schema tab, shows all the different columns in the table and describes their data types and can do a lot of things. I've updated the descriptions, and I'll share how I did this because you can do it automatically to kind of describe what data is in here. So for example, the data date column, the description now says it's a dimension, the day on which the data in this row was generated at specific time. And you could do things, and then, like, of course, clicks, the number of clicks on a given row. Details give you more about the specifics of the storage, and it's a little more kind of technical stuff. So not super duper important for most analyses, but you will want to know how big the table is getting, because that will affect how your billing. And if you have really big tables, you're going to run over your initial BigQuery free plan. And so you just kind of at least know where to find this if that ever becomes an issue. So that's where you can find the size of the tables in BigQuery. Then comes the fun part. This is the preview tab, is basically what the data looks like in a table. You don't even have to run a query. It just basically says these are the rows in the table, and it gives you, it gives me 50 out of 9,776,000 something rows that are available here. And this is, of course, the site impressions table. So there are fewer columns, but that's where we're starting because we want to keep things simple to get started. And as you can see, it is the date, the site URL, which is basically the profile associated with Google Search Console, the query associated with that, with the query that's kind of aggregate, all these metrics are aggregated up to, whether or not it's an anonymous query, which just means like it doesn't have a specific query associated. So in this case, the query is null, and then in this case, it's Trevor Fox. The null one is anonymous, and that's how Google rolls up all of its queries that are very long tail, and that could potentially be a conflict for privacy. If you have a very specific query that lands on one page, you can kind of like deduce from this query and this transaction and this user ID that this person's looked for this specific thing, and Google will aggregate all those together and conceal them so that you can't kind of track down people in a very specific manner. So that's whether they're anonymized or not. Of course, the country, very straightforward. 3 characters to denote the country. Search type, whether it's web, I believe, or discover, things like that. And then impression clicks and some top position. So impression clicks are very straightforward. It's the number of times within the scope of these characteristics dimensions that the site showed up in search, and the number of times it was clicked. And so what this top row here means, and we'll get into this a lot more later, is it is the number of impressions, which in this case is 1, that somebody searched for somebody in the US searched on mobile for the keyword or the query business category list on September 2nd, 2023, and my site showed up, and then we'll get into more on that, more on the kind of position stuff later. But for now, we're just going to walk through this really quickly. Lineage does not matter in this case. It's more for doing data modeling and kind of understanding data transformation, so we'll leave that alone for now. Data profile, data quality are also just features that are pretty much irrelevant for us. There's obviously a lot more that you can do here, but now is a great time to show how to query the data. So I can I can do it in a new tab, which we'll put it in a tab just like these up here, or I can put it in a split tab to the right, and which I will do here. So this way I can keep my definitions alongside my data right here. So this is actually not what I want, but anyways, let's just do it in a new tab, make it easy. So query in a new tab, and every time it is going to start with this very basic query where it selects star, which just means I want every single column in the table, and then it says from this table, which again is, it shows the project name, which we've talked about over here in the Explorer, the data set, which is Search Console, which is what I set up the profile for initially, which is my website, and then the table. And then it has a where clause, which basically is the filtering clause. So it says, I only want data where the data date, the data in which the data was collected, is exactly equal to July 7th, July 11th, 2024, which is today. That probably won't work since the data probably hasn't arrived yet. And then it says I want a limit of 1,000 rows. And so to run this, it's pretty straightforward. You can click run, or if you want to be kind of a cool guy or a girl or person or anything, you can hit Command Enter, and that will automatically do it for you. And of course, it says there's no data to display. So let's change that to exactly July 9th and run the same query again. And lo and behold, I get a list of I get a table produced with all the columns and I get the first 50 rows of 1,000 for that date. And so it's probably really important right now to say it's really important to filter on the date especially, but generally filter data, because Google bills by the number of rows in a given table that it scans. So if you don't do a filter, it'll scan the entire table, and that costs, think depending on how big that table, it could cost hundreds or thousands of times more than if you put a date filter on. So these tables are what is called partitioned. So if you think about this table conceptually as one really, really long table, it's actually stored in partitions. So think of it as a lot of tables stacked on top of each other, one with one table per date. And so if you filter it down on July 9th, then you will only get the partition data from the partition that is from that day, and so you won't have to scan across all those tables, and it will reduce both the time that it takes to perform that query, and it will also make that query much cheaper to run. So that, if you're following along, is your first query. And now we can get into something a little bit more sophisticated. I mean, this is very sophisticated to begin with, but I can add to the query and filter it further by saying and country equals USA. Notice that I don't capitalize and. That doesn't matter. It's just convention to capitalize the keywords in SQL. If you don't want to, you don't have to. I don't, because I don't like pressing caps lock or shift all the time just to do analytics. So live your own life, do whatever you want to do. Again, I will, and now let's say, okay, so now I will just get, and instead of, I will also order by, and see what the nice thing about BigQuery is that, let's see, it has some nice helpful predictive text there, because that's often what's going to come after order in this case. And I want to order it by impressions and then the desk, which means descending, but it's just an abbreviated way of doing that, so we don't have to type in descending every time. You can type in ASC, which is ascending, or descending, depending on how you want to order it. So now what we see is the date that we expect, the domain that we expect, and I filtered it all on USA. And why don't we do it? Well, let's make it interesting and do and search type. Also you can tab complete any of those suggestions that they have. Search type equals, and this is important to all caps web. In this case, country has to be lowercase, and if they don't match case, well, they won't filter, and you'll probably end up with no data, just like we did when we did when we filtered on date. So search type is web, and okay, rerun the query. Run super duper fast because, oh boy, run super duper fast because we filtered on date, and now it's filtering, and now there's only 633 different queries that my site showed up for on web in the USA on July 9th. And here's all of them. Oh, I should have actually even gone further. Okay, last one. Device equals desktop. All right. Run that. Here we are. The top query is null. It means it's all the queries that are anonymized, and there are 681 of those queries that got 60 clicks, and also happens that it's probably let's see, I can sort this descending. It's all the anonymous clicks are the most clicked ones as well. So that is just kind of like a preview of how to kind of explore your data. And in our case, there's only 3 tables that we're really concerned about, and how to query the data. We will, of course, get into much more sophisticated types of queries where we're also using the group by clause to group things into, say, we're going to group keywords or queries by impression, or group by country, or do those types of things. And we could also join things together. But for this video, I just want to keep it super simple, make it really easy to get started with BigQuery if you're unfamiliar with this, and just kind of give you a template for thinking about how can I just get the basic data out of BigQuery. So that's where we're going to end this part with, and then we're going to move on from there. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you found it helpful and you want a deeper dive into Google Search Console and BigQuery, be sure to check out my full course on trevorfox.com. It's packed with detailed lessons, practical examples, and hands-on exercises to help you master SQL for SEO. I'll see you there.